remember that they're changing my voice. This video is about the Havana Syndrome. I'm considered a high valued target by the governments of the world, by the intelligence communities of the world, because of my identity, because of my kind of default by birth social status, being the son of two doctors, one a brain surgeon, who's a humanitarian, and because I'm extremely politically active, having made 16,000 plus videos over the years since 2009. And so when it was very, very unpopular to argue that there were certain technologies being used on political dissidents, I slowly but surely weighed in. There was some people who tapped in before me, and I kind of warned at least one of them. I said, hey, they're probably not going to believe this, but I kind of, also weighed in over time, and I said, okay, let me just go all in and see what happens, okay? Because I knew that I had a lot of important stuff to talk about, and I still do. And I couldn't risk people not taking me seriously. But within no time flat, I kind of in a hesitant manner, got on board with, well, let's expose this as individuals. No one really teamed up with me too much, just lightweight. It was mostly me by myself and other people by themselves. And, we were sort of isolated. People would reach out to people and people would betray them and stuff like this. And so this Havana Syndrome obviously is very real. And I'm going to tell you something for sure, that there's more going on than what you think there is, right? People are getting their brains hacked remotely. They have other ways to mess up your cognition, not just this kind of dramatic attack to the brain that they're describing on CNN. And I just saw a video that came out or was posted on CNN on their YouTube channel maybe 5 hours ago is what it says, so the screenshot should be on the screen. They have all kinds of technologies to manipulate people, especially sexually. And I know that there's a lot of people that want me to shut up, but I am very adamant about being just, especially when it comes to romantic justice. And on top of everything else, I've suffered some of the worst heartbreaks, probably the worst heartbreaks, in fact, actually, in human history. Okay, I was engaged, and she left me for another person because she was some kind of governing class asset, and they were mad at me, and, it's a long story why that is. See my Proof I'm Christ playlist. And I prove that the miracles are figurative. Believe it or not, that's what this is about in my case, right? Gangstalking, Gangstalking. And the three females I dated after her did the same thing. I mean, they really went the distance to overkill their kind of psychological warfare against me in terms of romantic issues. I'm 44 years old now. Since about the beginning of 2018, which is 8 years. The last 8 years I haven't had a date, if I'm not mistaken. So give or take the last 8 years. And in my whole life, I've had a total of about 2.5 years of relationships. Even though I'm the son of two doctors, one a brain surgeon, I historically am an extremely handsome person. Extremely. No cockiness, just telling you the truth here. Great shape, right? My top martial arts challenge, just a very great person from a good family, just telling you the facts here. And in spite of that, I've only had 2.5 years total of relationships in the 44 years I've been on this planet. To put that in perspective, if they had all happened, the last 2.5 years, which they didn't, remember I haven't had a date in 8 years, that would have translated to me not having a date for the 1.5 years before that, to try to put that in perspective for you. So I'm suffering some cognitive impairment from years of them zapping my brain and using various technologies on me to try to play me out. And there's a lot of people who are victims of this. I'm just the main one in the sense that the program, right, the way people commonly refer to the program is gangstalking, the gangstalking program. I also refer to it as government harassment and other things, Masonic harassment, psychiatric harassment. There's a lot of things that is referred to as, community stalking, government stalking, what have you. I think that now there's an overwhelming amount of evidence that this stuff goes on. And in recent years, they've also resorted to making it so that my microphones are messed up. They've also edited my videos, and this is a very comprehensive program that is about control with an emphasis on sexual control. And it's cost me lots and lots of money, thousands of dollars every year, because they do stuff to the food and to the air, and I have to end up buying more food than I should, end up spending a lot of money on takeout because I can't eat the food in the house. They just make it so I spend a lot of money. I haven't been able to drink a glass of water for a long time. I have to drink juice and other soda and all the other things depending on the pattern of harassment. They advise me about what to drink. They say, no, don't drink that. And they try to tell me what to do. And that's also part of how they provoke me. And quite often they would provoke me to anger. Some of the worst brain zapping I endured was in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, 2021, where they would zap me so bad and I'd get very angry, right? And I endured a lot of brain zaps over the years. There's different estimates I put out there. I can't tell you with certainty exactly how many brain zaps I've endured, but certainly it's hundreds, if not thousands. Now, all of them aren't the same, right? Basically all of them hurt to some degree, but some of them really caused like a popping noise, and it really, I had to lay down and go to sleep, and luckily the next morning, usually my brain had recovered to a large degree. But there's times, like right now, I'm struggling to speak. It's not always like this. Sometimes I speak very effectively, okay? And it has a lot to do with the fumes in the air and the nanoparticles or whatever they're using, okay? I don't know all the technologies that they do use it. But recently in the news, okay, it's overkilled what is already talked about before. And the government backtracked, right? At first they were saying, no, they even blamed it on crickets or something like that, okay? And for those of you who don't know, as much as I hate to bring this up, when I was younger, I used to hang out with thugs and gang members, didn't know who I was, really trying to find my way. I was revolutionary, I'd look around and say, who should I hang out with, what have you. And a derogatory term for the Crips is a ricket or a cricket, not just a crab, right? And I don't think that's a coincidence. They do a lot of stuff like that. The wordplay is very big. We look at things in terms of, say the budget, where it talks about liabilities, right? Liabilities. Medic, right? It's a play on words for me, and the second word is dick. Hospital, hose, pit, alpha L, or hose, pit, lay. And there's a lot of stuff like that. Grub, G-rub, food, faux do, meal, melee. Okay, we scramble the last two letters. The AL becomes LA. There's a lot of stuff like that. Menu, and you go on a date, right? Menu, date, and the menu, and who gets to eat what food where. I've never been on a date in a 5-star restaurant before, even though I'm a brain surgeon's son, or a 4-star restaurant. And I went to like a 3-star restaurant before in one of these cities. And I was going to go ahead and say it's Santa Cruz. And the lady there, even though she was kind of a nice lady, she made it, she took the time to sort of play me out. This was years ago. This was back in with my last girlfriend, in 2017. And she said things like, oh, well, this is something different for a change, and da-da-da. And, when you joke like that with some rich person or with someone else, it's one thing. But she knew that it was going to affect me differently, that I was going to feel kind of embarrassed by it, what have you, like saying that, you don't deserve to be on a date at a nice restaurant. Okay, and the person I was dating at the time had cerebral palsy. Now, keep in mind, I lived in California most of my life. It's the most populated state in the country, one of the most populated states. It's the most populated state in one of the most populated countries in the world. And to put in perspective, I now am in Michigan, and Michigan has about 10 million people. California has about 40 million people, 40 million people. Okay, like 4 times as many people. I think Mississippi has 3 million people. Has 13 times more people than in Mississippi. And yet I was shunned. And the word shun is like the word sun, rhyme and reason. And that goes back to Psalm 19 and a lot of other connections there as well. I'm kind of going over time here. I'm feeling, some kind of way. I just saw the video. It's somewhat fresh in my mind, but I'm being fumed. I've basically been zapped in the brain during the course of making this video, just ever so slightly. And they have a more subtle way of doing it a lot of times, but it throws me off. I mean, they're refining their techniques here. And I know a lot of people want to blame this group and that group of the news. They said it was the Russians. In the comments, there were people who saw it more my way, who said, yes, this is almost certainly something that the government is doing, right? The American government is doing, or they're going to use the tool. So what was different about the news article or the news clip? I'm going to have to wrap this up. This often happens when I've been making a video for a little while. They kind of throw off my speech to a certain degree where I got to cut it short. But let me just wrap this up by saying this. They allegedly, during the end of the Biden administration, purchased something for, I think they said it was 8 figures. Okay. And it's a portable device that has to do with energy pulses, energy waves, something like this. And they also tracked a Russian group that was responsible for poisoning certain people the Russian government wanted dead. And they had said that that group also did research into directed energy weapons. So I think that it's safe to say that we now have certain facts that show you that there are people in intelligence communities that are using advanced technologies on people. In my case, it's clearly what they call SRA, satanic ritual abuse, as the main motivating factor is Satanism. And we see a sort of rise in out of the closet Satanism in recent years. Now, the word SRA scrambled is RAS, Raz. Now, Ra in Hebrew means evil, and Ra to the Egyptians is the sun which symbolizes God, like the sun symbolizes God in the bridegroom in Psalm 19. Okay, it was also referred to as the champion. And the son of the sun, right? Horus was the archetype of Pharaoh, basically the whole time throughout ancient Egypt, right? Whether it was the Old Kingdom, First Intermediate Period, Middle Kingdom, Second Intermediate Period, New Kingdom, what have you, all the way to the Foreign Period, we see that people take on Horus names as the central pharaonic name. And that's very important there. Now, quite often there was some cult that would sponsor them, right? So you have these guys named Amenhotep and things like this, right? And Akhenaten, named after the Aten, and these various cults that would back them. In the case of Akhenaten, he started his own cult, and he moved the capital, and so on and so forth. So, to make a long story short, behind the Ku Klux Klan and slavery was the occult. And they aimed their main kind of attacks on the king of the Igbos, the true king, because the Igbo tribe has been described more like a nation. There's different villages, okay, and over the years, obviously, like the rest of the world, they've assimilated into the New World Order, right? And the New World Order is a play on words for the Jew World Order. The NWO scrambled as OWN, right? They want to own everything, and it's more than just the Jews. A lot of people don't like it when I bring up that it's more than just the Jews. And when I say the Jews, I mean, there's Jews and Gentiles involved, right? If you see a Jewish person who's homeless, are they as involved as some person who's not a Jew who's a billionaire? No. Okay, that goes without saying. So it's sort of centered around a certain Jewish reproductive cycle, what have you. I don't want to get too, you might say conspiratorial. I've done a lot of research into this. I know the facts about this. I've met these people myself. I know for so many reasons I don't know where to start. And a lot of Jews themselves have spoken about this, believe it or not. But they haven't been so specific. Okay, so what the Nazis were to white people is kind of like what the main Jews who are doing this are to Jews. And they breed with different races and so on and so forth. So if you see in the news and the Jews, right? We see in Hollywood, like there's a bunch of Jews and crypto Jews, right? But it's not as simple as it's the Jews, because what is a Jew in the first place, right? What is a white person? What is any race? And I'm going way over time here. Let me wrap this up here, okay? And let me end this by saying it's not as simple as it's the Jews, but to ignore the fact that the Jews are involved in a certain way is insane, okay? To ignore the fact that the European elite is involved. When you look at conspiracy theory, for example, like the Protocols of Zion, which may or may not have been faked, they basically tell a lot of truth. It's like, quite often it's like 80, 90% true. And they throw in some nonsense, and that's how disinformation works. Okay, so it is certain rich whites, rich Jews, rich LGBT people. There's There are millions of token minorities all over the world helping them out. Okay, there's millions of whites and Jews and LGBT people helping them out. It's very much about illusion and psychology and controlling the moods, sentiments, emotions, and behaviors. It's about witchcraft, switchcraft. The word witch is a play on words for wit or white sea. The intelligence community, right? You know, witten meaning to know, right? Witty, witten as a root term for wisdom. Okay, you see the things that's being said like a math whiz. The word math is a play on words for mate. And they talk about doing the sacred math in Freemasonry, which is concerned with building things like building families, building bodies, right? Body building. And they're concerned with the gym. The word gym is a play on words for mage, where the Y can be considered a vowel as well. Now, I don't want to go too on and on about this because this video isn't about all these occult connections, but it helps you understand what's going on here. Occultism and science and philosophy go hand in hand. In fact, Masonry, for example, which is considered probably the biggest known occult organization is Freemason organizations, right? There's York Rite, Scottish Rite, there's the Eastern Star, there's the Prince Hall, and there's all kinds of groups that connect them like the Boule and so on and so forth. Am I the expert on these things? No. Okay. Do I know a lot about it? I know enough about it to connect it to this stuff here. And I could say with certainty that this is what's going on here. I could say with absolute certainty, after making 16,000 videos and talking about secret societies since my first official video on YouTube in 2009, I can tell you for 100% sure that you live on a planet controlled by occultists, and that it's very obvious these days, and that people are playing stupid. Okay, I can tell you with certainty that if you put it in a very serious way and you try to organize this uncontrolled opposition, that they will probably persecute you. I can also tell you with certainty that it is very stupid to fear them and to not fear God. You basically can't trust anybody but me as it stands right now. And with me, you got to make sure it's me. Now, why you can trust me is because I am Christ. I am the Son of God. I'm the top martial artist ever possible. Martial arts marital scrambled, and I, Christ, am the bridegroom. And I went way over time in this video. I'm gonna have to wrap this up here. I'm like on a roll almost, where I'm getting this off my chest and I'm explaining it. And quite often, that is a part of what they're doing too. For whatever reason, they have kind of allowed me to make these videos. They could have blinded me the rest. Oh, I forgot about that. And they brought up, okay, oh my goodness, let me bring this up real quickly. So during the protests in Iran, doctors reported over 400 eye injuries. Recently, somebody, I think it was somebody here in America, was blinded, and it came like back to back in the news, right? And then in the Havana Syndrome, it said that some of these people have succumbed to their brain injuries, and one person was permanently blinded, and they said they had to wear a weighted vest. And a lot of what's been going on, they injured my father to a large degree. He has all kinds of conditions for, and maybe I shouldn't bring this up, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. They fume him quite often more heavily than they fume me, but they target me more heavily from what I gather. And they really fumed him heavily. Okay, so in the name of God, they have killed 2 family members of mine. And keep in mind, before I finish this statement here, they have killed lots and lots of your family members too, whether you want to see it that way or not. Lots of them. Things don't work the way you might think that they do. They work in a way that is much more disturbing. People who have worked for national security and things like this have said things like, if you knew what the government was doing, okay, whatever you think that the government's doing it's much worse than that, and that is absolutely the case. Okay, the way things work is far more sinister than words can describe here. Okay, I went way over time. Let me just wrap it up here. Let me just wrap this up here. In 2017, at the end of the year, they blinded me for several days after some aircraft, maybe a military aircraft, some aircraft flew very close to my house. At a different point, I can't remember if it's before that or after that, an aircraft, like its engine cut out and it started rapidly descending toward my house. Then the engine kicked up again. It was probably an old aircraft, and they flew away, right? Or my parents' house, where I used to live in California on the ranch, in unincorporated Morgan Hill. Okay, so they blinded me for several days, and it caused me to crawl. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this because, I'm a grown man, I'm mature. If you think it's funny, shame on you. They say things like crawl like a crab. And remember, I used to hang out with gang members in California, okay, Crips and Bloods. And I'm not a gangster. I don't think it's sweet. I don't think anyone should be in gangs. They have occult connections to. The story for another day. I was never an occultist, never a Satanist, what have you. But that was part of why they did. They connect a lot of puns and insults to the process, the wordplay. It has a lot to do with insulting people in ways that are unbelievable. People get raped and they make fun of them. Okay, kids get kidnapped and get cut up, or they get just chopped into pieces. And they make fun of that, and it's in the wordplay. And I know for sure. I mean, they don't want to debate me on these things because if you look at the debates I have posted, I have utterly cleaned up. Okay, utterly cleaned up. I have won every debate, and I have maybe 10 or 20 debates posted. Okay, some of them are very long debates, several hours, if I'm not mistaken here. So I'm somebody who at one point I scored the top 1 percentile in the SSAT to get into a very very competitive high school. I'm a very intelligent person. Okay, I'm not some crazy person. Not only am I right, and I have the facts and valid sources and peer-reviewed sources at times, okay, but I've won every debate, and when it comes to the highest test of mental intelligence, mental acuity, mental prowess, I have triumphed over everyone that's ever lived. And that's my top martial arts challenge, which is still going, even through sabotage, and there are 8 billion people or so on the planet right now. No one in history will ever be able to argue that they made a more impressive challenge or that they triumphed over in a more impressive contest or event. Okay? Naturally so, what have you, due to tech, breeding, cheating, and generational ill-gotten gains ruling out people in the future. For example, if say 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, someone made a martial art challenge, it's to people who are a lot less, had worse nutrition, a lot less shape, what have you. Okay, there was less transportation. Who are they making the challenge to? Right? Maybe a few hundred people, a few thousand. Well, try 8 billion people and triumphing over them all. Okay, martial is marital scramble, deny Christ in the top martial artist. My triumph is better than David triumphing over Goliath. And Christ is the root and offspring of David, Dave, Vi, D, and I am Christ, the Son of God.